national president of the AOH, Sean Pender. When we heard about this book, Sean, we were talking about it in Albany. We said, maybe we could do this, but it was still a wild shot. Sean was over in Ireland. He made all this happen. He was the one that coordinated with all the cities that we would have good representation. And I'm so proud to introduce him and that he wanted to come to Cleveland with this book tour. Sean Pender.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you for your leadership that you have done for so many years. Yeah, this story goes out to our advocacy, both us, the AOH and the LAOH, and what we do to help the people in the North, and specifically groups like Relatives for Justice, who help the victims and survivors. And as you hear these stories tonight, you'll hear some of that. Peader has done a tremendous job on this book. Peader's parents are Andre Murphy and Mark Thompson, who were the directors of Relatives for Justice, a long time beneficiary of our Christmas appeal. Rita O'Hara will tell you stuff like that, Kathy Linton, and others will tell you that for years we have been able to support these groups. Peader will tell you that the Relatives for Justice help survivors, but they're allowed to get government grants to do things like therapy, whether it be physical or mental. But what they also do is try to tell the story of those that were negatively affected by the British involvement during the Troubles. Those funds the government gives them are not allowed to do the investigative work that does. That's where we come in. We have been able, over the last several years, to give a lot of funding so they can tell the stories of a lot of the people that you're going to hear about tonight. So we're so proud to be able to bring it here to such a great crowd in Cleveland. And we talked about this. We talked about how do we reach out to others. And the one thing we know is that when we do things together, we're better. So that's why we wanted to get the AOH, the LAOH, and the local GAA. Both the LAOH and the AOH now has a memorandum of understanding, and we also have a sponsorship deal with the US GAA. I think we have to realize that with the Irish immigration policy right now, there's not a lot of Irish coming in to this country. But there's a lot of things that we can work on together. So what we have to do is events like this. We need to try to gain membership, and we need to have our membership support the GAA events. I have been totally blown away by the work of the USGAA in places like Albany, in Hartford, in Philadelphia, the New York GAA in Rockland. But I think what we have to do is work together a little bit more to try to support each other. So my hat is off to the GAA members in here for what you're doing to keep our heritage alive in what is probably one of the most important things to any Irishman, and that's their GAA club. So I thank you for all being here tonight. My hat is always off to my very good friend Marilyn Madigan, whose passion for Ireland, for history, and justice is unmatched. So at this point, I'd like to give it back to Marilyn to recognize other members of the Cleveland community, but thank you very much for welcoming us tonight. God bless.
Thank you, Sean. And this Westside Irish American Club was always a home of immigration, as Sean pointed out. We don't have the immigrants coming in like we've had in the past, but this club started in 1932. It's been in a variety of different locations, but I think this is one of the finest locations right now. We've been here over 20 years, and this is truly the home of the Irish on the west side of Cleveland. This is the home of the GAA, where they play. This is the home where the LAOH, Our Lady of the Rosary Division, meets. So I want to first introduce, because none of this could have been made possible if it wasn't for the cooperation of the Westside IA, allowing us the use of this wonderful facility. I'd like to introduce the president, Dan Chambers.
Thanks, Marilyn, and you're all welcome to the Westside Irish American Club. It's an honor to be the host of this when you have all these choices and you have the national chairman, but when Marilyn Madigan calls you, and John O'Brien Jr. calls you and says, we need to talk, you listen. So, Marilyn is, the words are great spoken that you said about her. She's a driven person. We're lucky to have her as a West Side Irish American person and also a West Side Irish American Club member. And our mission here at the IA is, it's simple, is to preserve, promote our rich Irish cultural traditions. And literature is one of them. So where else would you have it if you came to Cleveland but at the West Side Irish American Club? So Peter, Cleveland, welcome. You're always welcome to the West Side IA. We are grateful to the GAA for their commitment to the West Side IA. We are grateful to the Hibernians, the LAOH, for their commitment to the West Side Irish American Club to make this club. It's a mission. She's right. The immigrants are not here. I'm third generation. It gets harder every year to keep promoting, but events like this have to be preserved and appreciated. So you're welcome. So thank you. Welcome.
As a long time ago camogie player, I always have a deep love of the GAA. St. Pat's and St. Charlette's has been a wonderful club. And whenever you reach out to Vince and the members of the GAA, they're always willing to help you. And I think we have a great partnership going between the ladies. I'm the LAOH National Liaison with the GAA. And I cannot think of a better club to work with than the GAA here in Cleveland, St. Pat's and St. Charlette's. I'd like to introduce Vince Beach.
Bala Yuri an show, agus falcha carja. Inchin is anam dom, agus is kaharlak, kuman Lost Gaels, Cleveland, me. Is shakten na Gaelga, so kupla fakkel as Gaelga. Mila Buikas, the West Side IA, LAOH, AOH, agus iIrish, as anacht. Agus falcha, specialta, a father. Ura Mila Magat, as chach, as ukdo quid ama, agus aber, as a raw, na strielta show. Okay. Welcome, friends. The Cleveland GAA is very honored and grateful to be co-hosting this event with so many great organizations. May the collaborations continue. We are also very thankful to Peader Thompson, his team, and Relatives for Justice for the massive labor of love of this book and for sharing it with us tonight. For many of our GAA members here in America, the conflict in Ireland was far from us, both in distance and time. Many new members to the GAA, young members to the GAA. This book and these family stories remind us of the sacrifices others have made to play these games and to express Irish culture. It also reminds us of the responsibility we have to create and promote a community spirit of awareness and love of Irish ideals, culture, language, dance, music, agus song. So, Gura Mila Magi iIrish.
Kevin Reynolds is a past state president of the AOH and a longtime member of the Bowling Berry Division.
Thanks, Marilyn. I appreciate the introduction. I'm Kevin Reynolds. I am currently the financial secretary for the Bowling Berry Division, which is the West Side Division of the AOH in Cleveland. We meet the second Wednesday of each month at the VFW Club on the corner of West 150th and Lorraine Avenue. We're always seeking new members. I have some applications here, if anybody's interested. I'm at the back table there. We've been in a recognized division of the AOH since 1964. We were kind of rechartered in '66, and that was after some turbulence amongst ourselves. But since 1966, with the help of Augustine Boland and William Berry, two of the charter members from the division that was chartered in the 60s, kind of helped us stay in business, and we've been in continuous business since the 60s, which I've been a member for over 50 years now. We are looking for some younger fellas. You just have to be Irish and practicing Catholic and over 16 years of age, and we'd be happy to have you join with us. We do a number of activities throughout the year, a reverse raffle, we do golf outing, and some St. Patrick's, St. Bridget's Day recognition. So I'd appreciate it if anybody's interested, see me in the back, and I'd be happy to take the application from you. And thank you, Marilyn, for giving us an opportunity to try to recruit some of these young fellas.
I have to say, I've been a member of the West Side IA since 1969. And I'm very proud to be a member. But it really wasn't until I became a Hibernian that everything came together. My Irish Catholic heritage, my faith, my love of the history, my love of my community. I cannot find another organization that does more for the community, both here and in Ireland, than the Hibernians. And we would love for you to join us. The ladies meet here the second Wednesday of every month, and we would always have an open door to anybody here. But I think going back and forth to Ireland the last few years with the Freedom for All Ireland, first with Sean's trip, and now with the ladies do our own, so that we can be in a smaller group and meet the groups that we affect over there. It's so powerful. And I remember the first time I met Peader. He was a student at the time and was doing a research paper that has now turned into this book. I have read the whole book. It's excellent. And as I said at the Westside IA meeting, every Irishman should have this book. If you call yourself a Gael, you need to have this book. It really tells about what it means to promote your music, your song, your language, your Catholic heritage, and your sport. So at this time, I'm honored to introduce Peader Thompson.
Marlon, a carja to Ahas and Donorum and Sean Knock in Cleveland. Friends, it's a real honor and privilege to be here tonight, to be invited in, and I just want to start off just by thanking tonight's organisers. A special thanks to Marlon and the LAOH, Rita, for ferrying me about and showing me the fantastic city and the Rock and Roll Museum earlier. A massive thank you to Sean and Dan and the local GAA with Vincent Nixon, Gurmina Morgan. A few years ago, just to give you a context as to how important Irish America is for work like this. A few years ago, I made a presentation when I was beginning this project at the Hill of O'Neill in Dungannon. And it was an FFI trip, if I'm correct, with the ladies and the men of the Ancient Order of Hibernians. And they provided a check that evening or that day. And it's only as a result of that support and that generosity of the Hibernians that this book was made possible. And to give you a real sense of what this book is, I'm going to read out a couple of excerpts. So this is the story of Patsy Kelly. I drove down to Killorgan in County Kerry to meet with Patsy's youngest son, Patrick Jr. At the heart of it, my father was a community man. He loved to help people and was always concerned with what he could do to help make the immediate lives of people around him better. Patrick Kelly describes his dad. The GAA played an integral role in my father's story, both during his life and in the legacy of his death, and the two will always be entwined. Patsy Kelly was born on the 4th of April 1939 in Trillick, in the townland of Golan, County Tyrone, a few miles from the county border with Fermanagh. He was Paddy and Rose's youngest child, growing up with sisters May, Bridie, Ethne and Annie, and brothers Peader and his brother Peader. Patsy attended his local national school in Golan, which he left aged 14 to work initially for a plastics factory in Golan, initially for a plastics factory in Enniskillen, and then at the water board, a post that he held for a number of years. It was during this time that he started seeing childhood sweetheart Teresa. The pair knew one another from school, but met again years later at the local dances and functions. After a few years together, Patsy and Teresa married in 1966, and shortly thereafter, having moved into the new home they had just built, their first child, Geraldine, came along. Geraldine was soon followed by Barry, Fergal, Una, and Patrick was the last. In 1974, Patsy then became co-landlord with his brother-in-law, also called Patsy Kelly, of the local pub, the Corner House. As a person, I suppose he found a passion for getting involved in the community. He was highly involved in the civil rights movement at a local level, and he was always seeing what he could do to help the people out. The desire and sense of duty to his community eventually led him to becoming an independent councillor in the Omagh District Council in 1973. There was a real sense that what really mattered to him were the bread and butter issues. He became involved in local politics because he cared about equality in terms of housing and employment and those fundamental everyday issues. The GAA was a part of Patsy's life from a young age. He grew up around the GAA, with Trillick St McCartan's being the local club, and he would have played in the various parish leagues at that time around Golan and the neighbouring townlands. In terms of playing ability, he wouldn't have been at the level to carry him through the senior, but that would have never affected his passion and love for Gaelic games. The club was always in his life, him being a regular in the stands on a Sunday. When my father started managing the pub with Uncle Patsy, who was on the senior team alongside his brother John, known as the famous Kelly twins, he was all too delighted to be at the heart of the post-football pints, as the crowds would make their way to the two Patsy's bar. Those were the days when you'd have a training session or a match and go for a couple afterwards. Whilst the role of the GAA in Patsy's life is typical of many a Gael across Ireland, Patrick goes on to explain the extraordinary role it played in the wake of his father's death. My father went missing on the 24th of July 1974, just a fortnight or so before Trillick were due to play Ardbow in the Tyrone Championship semi-final and compete for a spot in the club's first senior final since 1937. In those weeks before the 24th, the excitement in the village would have been palpable. When my father went missing, everything stopped. The 3-week search for my father's body was then swung into effect and was driven by the local community. The GAA hall became HQ for the search, and everything was organised from there. There were maps all laid out on the tables every morning, and groups of volunteers would head out each day to search their assigned grids. There were volunteers making sandwiches and tea and making sure everybody was fueled to go back out to search. It was a case of when something goes wrong, where did everybody congregate? It was the GAA club. Everything stemmed from Trillick's Donnelly Park. It was incredible the role the GAA played at that local level. But as the search widened, the association's role became hugely important. At a county board level, the decision was taken to suspend the scheduled matches, and Tyrone County Board called on all of its members to mobilise and come to Trillick to help the search. People came in their droves, and soon after, Fermanagh County Board made the same call of its members. GAA people from all over Ulster arrived to help with the search. Police involvement in the search was only to save face from embarrassment of being shown up by the collective and determined volunteers from the community, of which the GAA was an integral part. Because of that role, Trillick GAA and the wider association was a hugely important part of my family's heart. They really came to the fore and became everything you hope and believe what the GAA is. When the Tyrone Championship eventually resumed after Patsy Kelly's remains were found, Trillick still had the line out against Art Bow. When the final whistle went, I think the whole village let out a massive sigh of relief, almost as Trillick won the game. My uncle John was playing cornerback, and my father's brother Petey came running onto the pitch and jumped on top of John, and the pair fell to the ground in celebration. There's a real poignancy to that scene, that at least for those couple of seconds, it lifted the grief. It didn't change anything, and the grief would return, but football provided that brief reprieve, and it did so for the whole community, I might add. Trillick went on to win the Tyrone Senior Football Championship in 1974 and were runners-up in the Ulster final. It was the first of 5 senior championships they would win over the next 12 years. The way the community reacted to the news of my father's disappearance seemed to bind people together more so than they had ever experienced. Those Trillick sides of the mid-70s were blessed with extremely skillful players throughout the team and were destined for success regardless. But there is no doubt that the legacy of my father's killing was to have a galvanising effect in the community, which had to come through that. Patsy Kelly was 35 years old when he was abducted on the night of the 24th of July, 1974, as he locked up his bar. He was killed and weights were tied to his body, which was sunk to the bottom of Loch Gaels, some 12 miles away from Trillick. A 3-week search ended when his body was discovered in the morning of the 10th of August by a local man who had gone out fishing. It was by complete chance that his body was discovered, the man being on the water during the short time window where a sunken body will surface as it inflates before resubmerging permanently. During the search, police had discouraged the search parties from going to Loch Gaels, stating that they had already dredged the loch. Although the UDA claimed responsibility for his killing, from the night Patsy went missing, his family and wider public more generally have considered Crown forces to be a party to his killing, attempted disappearance, and subsequent attempts at cover-up. These suspicions were corroborated by a 2023 police ombudsman's report, which found evidence of collusive behaviour in the initial investigation, and that Patsy's family were failed by the police. During the search for Patsy, Teresa discovered she was pregnant with her youngest child, Patrick. Those who did that to my father intended to disappear him and send him a clear message to anyone who sought to better their community, to strike fear into Trillick and the wider area. The opposite happened. The legacy of my father's killing was the coming together of a community during a time of great loss and hurt, with the volunteers of the GAA being central to organising and helping my family. The club itself the following year commissioned the Patsy Kelly Memorial Cup, and it's still in use by the club today in their youth tournaments. It is a huge honour to know my father is still part of the club, and that will always be a big part of his legacy. I hope Patrick's entry to the book gives you a real sense of what I was trying to capture with this book. The real connection that exists between the GAA and the people of Ireland, and just how important an organisation it remains to the Irish people. I want to also leave you all today with 2 shanachals, old Irish proverbs. The first shanachal is Ar scat a céile a waran na daoine. The literal translation of this Shanachal is that people live in the shadow of one another, but its meaning is more accurately deciphered as the belief that people rely on one another for shelter in life, that we only truly live when we accept that no one person is an island. I chose this as the opening line of Lost Gaels because it fundamentally reflects what this book is about. It reflects the power that we each exercise as individuals when we listen to one another, as those speaking become empowered by the collective. The Shanachal speaks to the fact that acknowledgement is one of the most powerful tools we possess when we interact with one another. To be seen, to be heard, to be respected. These are the central qualities of human dignity that we each afford to one another, that assure us of our equal worth as citizens. Conflict usually comes about because of a denial of these central qualities. And it is therefore unsurprising to learn that acknowledgement plays a central role in rebuilding relationships after conflict. This is because during conflict, violence not only has the effect of harming the victim, it also has the effect of silencing the victim. What is crucial for any peace-building effort is to reverse that silence. By listening to victims' experiences and acknowledging their hurt, we help to restore the central qualities of human dignity and ensure that the circumstances which preceded and perpetuated violent conflict no longer exist. That is precisely what this book does. It provides a platform for families to speak and for us all to gather around and listen. It is a tangible acknowledgement of their experience, and through the very act of reading it, you engage in a process of empowerment for all of those bereaved families. You help to provide the shelter and life that our Irish ancestors described as being so crucial. The second Shanachal I'd like to leave you with is Cheer Gan Changa, Cheer Gan Anam. You may recognise this as the slogan of the Irish language community and those seeking the protection and promotion of our Indigenous language. And that's because it directly translates as a country without a language is a country without a soul. And you may be wondering how that's relevant to this book, but for me, the word Changa in that sentence of the language, when we talk about the soul of the Irish people, is much more than just the linguistic difference between Irish and English. It is that our language captures our history, our stories, and our experience as an Irish people. That as a country and a people, we have ownership over it. British occupation went to the depths of evil to deny this ownership from us. Because when the subjugated people lose their sense of who they are as a collective, they lose any reason to resist. They denied our history, they denied our stories, and they denied our experience. But they failed. They failed because we Irish have always told our stories. We have always remembered our history, and we will always carry our experience. Every one of you here tonight with Irish ancestry carries your own family's experience. Stories of immigration which reflect the story of the Irish people. Through our long tradition of storytelling, we have kept the soul of Ireland alive. It is why in Irish culture, the storyteller is revered. Every village, town, hamlet in Ireland at one stage had its own Shanachie, who would pass down the local law, history, lore, custom. When it comes to the most recent conflict in Ireland, this point is crucial. As some of you may be aware, the British state, through draconian legislation, seeks to deny the stories and experiences of Irish victims, the stories and experiences that are recorded in this book. What is crucial for us is to ensure that we record our own stories and we record our own experiences. In this way, we preserve our own language. Before this book was written, we did not even know how many members of the largest civic organisation on the island of Ireland were lost to a 30-year conflict. As a repository of stories and experiences told directly by the bereaved victims of our conflict, this book is part of a living tradition that forms the backbone of Irish cultural identity. It represents the continuous flow of experience from past to present and serves as a bridge between generations. Most importantly, this book restores language to victims and serves as a shield against repressive attempts to deny our history as an Irish people. To write it, I travelled the length and breadth of Ireland. I was hosted in kitchens, living rooms, the odd garden shed, and consumed more tea in 2 years than most consumed in a life. While I worked out the best plan of attack for a mountain of sandwiches, a tray of baked goods, and an unending supply of warm beverages, I sat in the homes of the most wonderful people, and I listened. For most families involved in this book, it was the first time that anyone had bothered to listen. Further, it was the first time that anyone had cared to ask about their cherished memories of their loved one. As a Gael, being a member of the GAA is as important a marker of identity as anything else that makes up a person who he or she is. It was my intention to ask the types of questions which would help to redefine and reshape recorded memory. In other words, I wanted to empower families with the platform to ensure that the lasting legacy of their loved one is not just victim, but also person and Gael. This sparked new conversations amongst family members and friends. Old memories were rediscovered or indeed shared for the first time. And the entire ethos of this book has been to provide a much needed human lens to our conflict. It is deliberately unfiltered, and I wrote it with a collaboration and total approval of every family involved. It is a repository of memory and life, both off and on the pitch. It is not a statistical survey, and it does not use figures to serve engineered narratives. They are real human stories. And so I'd like to finish with just one last of those human stories. Jerry used to tell all his team, as a player and then as a coach, be big. It was his mantra. Words to live by both off and on the pitch. It means stand up and be counted. Be strong and proud and make life hard for the opposition. Kevin Devlin begins to describe his brother, teammate and closest friend. Jerry typified what it meant to be a Gael, driven by a clear sense of duty to his club, which was instilled in him by our father. James Gerard Devlin, known to everyone as Jerry, was born on the 8th of August 1961 to Seamus and Margaret. He was the third of their 7 children. Growing up with brothers Michael, Kevin, Liam and Eamon, and sisters Angela and Una. The family lived initially in Glanworth Drive in North Belfast before moving in 1971 to Glengormley, County Antrim. Kevin explains how sport was omnipresent in the Devlin household and how the family's move to Glengormley would be the beginning of their family's generational and successful service to St Enda's Gaelic Athletic Club. Sport has always been in our family. Our paternal grandfather was a soccer star, playing for various Irish League teams when it was an All-Ireland competition, back before the partitioning of Irish soccer. In fact, He won the Irish Cup in the 1920s with Alton United, beating Shelburne 1-0 at Dalymount Park in the final. So we were always aware of that sporting ability and success in the family, and it was certainly a positive influence on Jerry and the rest of us. And while we enjoyed playing soccer, it was a true love for Gaelic football that developed in us lads. As kids, long before moving to Glengormley and joining St Enda's, our father would have regularly taken us to Casement Park to watch different club and county games, and I particularly remember following the famous Antrim under-21 footballers of 1969. From Castleblaney to Cork, and then finally to Croke, our dad took us to each round of that championship campaign, which ended in Antrim lifting the Clark Cup. Like the rest of us, Jerry's first days getting to play football came when he joined the Christian Brothers at Park Lodge Primary School. His school team were very successful, winning the Raffle Cup twice and the Rice Cup. That success continued when he went to St Mary's CBS in the Glen Road in West Belfast, with his first team winning the league and in Ulster College's Dalton Cup. So when the move to Glengormley came in '71, joining the ranks of St Enda's was inevitable for us all. It was my dad who brought us to the club. There were 5 boys and 2 girls in the family, and we would all go over with our dad to the pitch and kick a ball about. The club had 1 juvenile team and 1 senior team, and the clubhouse was just an old shebeen. As young kids of 8 or 9 years of age, we would have played with kids of 12 or 13, which is a big difference at that age. But all that mattered to us was enjoying the game and getting out onto the field. With Jerry and I only being a year apart, we would have been on the same teams as we went through the age groups, and our dad took all of our teams from under 10 right through. Success seemed to follow Jerry from a young age. In 1973, his team won the under-13 South Antrim League by taking home the first underage silverware for St Enda's, which was soon followed by winning the under-14 league in 1975 and the Butler Cup in 1976. His ability on the field of play did not go unnoticed, and in the following year of '77, Jerry made his senior debut, aged 16. This period also saw Jerry placed onto the Antrim minor and under-21 football panels, and what became clear to the coaches at St Enda's was that they were sitting on a gold mine of young talent ready to bring the club to new levels, of which Jerry was an integral part. When I joined Jerry on the senior panel, we were in Division 3. Ger played in the forward line and I played in the middle of the park. We ended 1984 as Division 3 champions, Jerry being one of the leaders in that team. We then moved into Division 2 and immediately began chasing Division 1 status, with Ger leading the charge. Our chance came in 1988 when we reached the playoff final against O'Donnell's, and we took it. For the first time in the club's history, St Enda's had earned their place in Division 1 senior football, and the Devlins played an integral role. The following season, however, would see Ger's playing career cut short through injury. Teammates remark on his fearless style of play and how his intense desire to win the ball made him an excellent battler for the high ball in the 50-50, but how it also left him vulnerable. Having suffered a severe injury to the ligaments in his knee and come out the other side during his senior career, a second knock in 1989 proved insurmountable and put an end to Ger's playing days. To Ger, whilst there was devastating news to a certain extent, a new chapter was just beginning. We watched our father dedicate his time to coaching and taking teams, and for Ger, this was now his time to start learning the ropes of management. Our father had instilled in us a view that it was our duty to your club to give what you can, because if you didn't step up and look after it, nobody would. And so Ger then viewed management as the natural next step. Coming into the management team, Ger was immediately given the reins of his newly promoted side, and the shock of Division 1 football took some adjusting to. Over the next 2 seasons, St Enda's bounced between both divisions before Ger's management finally saw them cemented as a solid Division 1 team in 1993, during which time he also served as vice chairman of the club. He was meticulous in his planning and record keeping as a manager. We still have numerous A4 diaries containing every date of every training session, including attendance sheets and listed reasons for non-attendance by players. Old players can come and see when they went. Old players can come and see when and where they went on holidays. On each Monday in the books, the Irish News cutout is pasted in, detailing the results of the previous week. And on the Tuesday, the Irish News cutout with that week's upcoming fixtures. These books cover every year of his management. He was extremely professional and would fit in so well with today's game, and he certainly helped evolve the thinking and mentality around the club about how things are run. In 1995, Gerard believed his team would benefit from a fresh perspective, so the club brought in Frank Dawson to take charge of the season, with Gerard as his assistant. That championship campaign saw St Enda's reach the semi-final, but narrowly lose out to the eventual winners, St Paul's. That was the furthest the club had ever been in the Antrim Senior Football Championship, and Gerard was set to take back full control the following season in the hope of going a step further. Off the pitch, having finished his O-levels at St Mary's CBS, Gerard joined Rotary International, and through the years worked his way up to senior management within the Belfast office, becoming one of their international shipping managers. He was quiet enough in his own way. We were best of mates growing up as well as best of brothers, being only 18 months between us. But the difference between us would have been how he organised himself. Jerry was a bit of a dapper Dan, and his boots always washed, cleaned and polished, and even with his bookkeeping, where I was a bit more rough and ready. He then met Hazel when he was in his late teens, and the pair became very happy and settled, with them marrying in 1981. Gavin then came along, soon followed by Aidan, and with him having 2 boys and me having 2 boys, we ended up going on 11 or 12 holidays together as families. He became a real family man and was very comfortable between his family, job and the club. Jerry Devlin was killed on the 5th of December 1997 at the gates of St Enda's clubhouse by the UDA. He was arriving at the club to collect his brother Kevin when the gunmen killed him. The Devlin family and legal counsel have compelling evidence of collusive behaviour between the state and loyalist paramilitaries surrounding Gerard's death. No one has been prosecuted for Gerard's killing. Gerard's legacy has become foundational to the ethos, identity and spirit of the modern day St Enda's club. In 2018, the club reached the All-Ireland Intermediate Football Final, becoming county and provincial champions along the way. Through their incredible footballing campaign, one phrase was repeated again and again: be big. In his honour, the Senior Footballer of the Year award is named after Gerard, and in 2012, Micheál Moriarty officially opened a new park, Royd in Devlin. In 2006, the Jerry Devlin tournament was held to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the formation of the club, and it hosted Omagh St Enda's, featuring multiple All-Ireland winners, Ulster Club champions from St Gaels, Derry champions Balahi Wolf Tones, and St Enda's Belfast. Each year on Gerard's birthday, St Enda's also organises an annual golf tournament, which continues to be fully subscribed. Our Jerry was terrible in the tee box, and he could never get the ball away, so his friends at Rotary bought him a 1-iron and nicknamed it the Silver Hearn. So now a rule of the annual golf tournament is that everyone must choose the 1-iron to tee off on the first hole. If you manage to stay on the fairway, you win the Silver Hearn prize. A Carja Gura Mila Moigad. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm taking pictures and videos of everywhere I go and sending that home. I'll be sending it to Kevin, Patsy. What it means for families to know that their stories are cared about, that people want to know. The value of that cannot be overstated. The support that Irish America has always provided to families can also not be overstated. And so I just want to thank you again for coming here tonight, especially on a Sunday evening, and I know the city has a victory to be celebrating. So, Garamila Moigav again. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Peader before we turn it over? I know.
Yes?
So you went around and sat with each one of these families, and then when you wrote your story or your tale, then they had the approval, the right of approval,
Yeah.
or disagreement?
Yeah, so I sat with each of the bereaved families, and you know, ended up, you know yourselves, we Irish families might take a wee minute to get going, but then when you schedule in, maybe, you know, I was maybe a bit wet behind the ears to begin with, you maybe schedule in 45 minutes, and then you walk out 5 hours later. And so that was all recorded, voice recorded. And then I would go away, and the task of having to then transcribe and come up with a 700-word entry of a 5-hour conversation where people are shouting over the top of each other. Yeah, I would go away and create that first entry, and then send that to the family, and oftentimes sit with the family, and we would go over it, every aspect, and ensure that they were happy with that final outcome. And that's how each entry was written.
Peader, you mentioned that in there's a lot of the victims, and of course, unfortunately, there are victims of violence. Will you tell the assembled body about how many people have got justice?
Yeah, so of all of the names in the book, there are 2 convictions. One of those convictions in the case of Aidan McInnesby, I believe, is currently on appeal. So that goes to show you just how relevant and live these issues of justice are. Last weekend in Ballybuffet in County Donegal at the annual GAA Congress, Jarlath Burns, GAA president, who also wrote the foreword to this book, was the first act of the Congress, brought out onto the stage the family of Sean Brown. It was on the anniversary of Aidan McInnesby's killing. He brought out onto the stage Bridie, Claire, Damon, and the rest of the Brown family. And he committed the GAA to the support of the Brown family in their campaign to get a full public inquiry into the death of Sean. He was the chairperson of Balachi Wolf Tongues when he was abducted and murdered by the LBF. His story is included in the book. These issues are not going away, and unfortunately families over decades have had to fight tooth and nail with the British government to get justice and for truth to emerge. So of all of the people included in this book, there are only 2 convictions.
But it's Irish Americans, and those especially in the AOH and the LAH, we shouldn't be surprised, because it just continues to do the actual job that the British did, which was cover up, whitewash. When they killed the people in Bloody Sunday, what did they say? They put down a major IRA uprising. And it took those families 42 years to get vindication. 42 years. But then what they didn't tell you is that same group of soldiers was in Ballymurphy 6 months earlier and killed 11 people over 3 days, including a parish priest and a mother of 8. And it took those people 50 years to get justice. So if you can kill 15 people and 11 people and cover it up for 42 and 50 years, what hope that these 164 have. The AOH and the LLH continues to work with groups like Relatives for Justice and the Pat Finucane Center to make sure that we get justice for these people. And these people are not looking for large money settlements. They're looking for the truth. And the truth is that they were killed by the state that was responsible for keeping its citizens safe. And they have denied that. Right now, the AOH was very proud to have lobbied the Irish government and also politicians in this country to make sure that this legacy bill that they want to get passed is not allowed. We convinced with our friends on both sides of the aisle to tell the Irish government, you need to take the British government to the European Court of Human Rights. Even though the British have withdrawn via Brexit, they are still responsible to be governed by this court. And all of the leading legal minds that have looked at it said that what they'll find is that what they're doing is wrong. Because what's happening as these patient people are waiting for their day in court, they're getting the rug pulled out from underneath them. And why? Because the court cases that are going through is finding out that there was collusion. Sean Brown was not killed by a bunch of people who just wanted to go out on a joyride. Sean Brown was killed because he was an icon in his community. He was looked up in his community. And the Brits and those who supported him said, that's what we need to do to scare those people. We need to take down the leaders. But his family has never given up. And I applaud Jarlath Burns and the GAA for making sure that this case and so many more will not be forgotten. They have put together a new body to take a look at how to do this. And what they've done is thrown hundreds of millions of pounds to create it. Well, if they just had taken a percentage of that and allowed the court system to work through, we'd be through this already. And you know what's happening? Of all the open cases, no one is going to this body. You know why? Because they don't trust them. And we shouldn't trust them. We should wait till this court case is done and then everybody gets their day in court. Everybody from all sides of the community. And that's why I'm proud, and I know Marilyn is proud, and that's why we work so hard to give a voice to these people. So I thank you, Cleveland, for being here. I want to turn it back to Marilyn, but I want to tell you, this has been the greatest crowd that we have had from a numbers standpoint. So thank you so much. And I want to tell the GAA, especially this year, when you go out in the pitch, remember the Lost Gaels that Peader has talked about. We have plenty more books available. It's an education thing. So if you think of someone else in the GAA community, in the AOH community, in the LAOH community, it makes a great way to tell them of what happened. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank Cleveland, Maryland, the GAA, the AOH, and Cleveland for being such a great turnout tonight.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Vince Beach to come forward.
So we'd like to just present Potter with a Cleveland GAA jersey. This is worn by our U16s, and the logo on the front is the Westside IA. So just a little remembrance of being here in Cleveland, and thank you so much, Gurumid and Magi.
To put on that jersey, and in addition to it is a souvenir button celebrating our 130th year as an organization. But more importantly, this is the year 25. And every year our St. Patrick's Day parade has a shamrock pin with the year in it. We want Peader to be wearing it to remember Cleveland and his tour here in the United States. enjoy yourself. The bar is open, and we have books to sell. And every Gael needs this book. Because when you read through it, you realize what Sean was saying. There's so many areas where if the British government had been held accountable and the police force, so many lives would have been saved. And that's all about it, it's the lives. All these people want to know is what really happened to their loved ones. And it's amazing when you read this book, how many lives would have been saved if the British government had done what they were supposed to do and protect their citizens. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Wow.